Hey everybody, Jeremy here from Misio. I hope you have an amazing day. We recently sent out an industry survey to learn a bit more about how sustainability professionals are managing their time when it comes to stakeholder relations. Now, specifically, we're talking about how much time are organizations spending on manually sharing environmental and social related data, metrics, documentation, and information for different stakeholders in their value chain. And the data we got back was really interesting. We have to consider today that the role of the sustainability team is quite diverse in itself. And there are lots of internal stakeholders to appease. There's lots of different initiatives underway, and it's quite a complicated ecosystem. But if you took a general lens on this around, data collection and reporting responsibilities, managing different initiatives in the organization, there's compliance, there's planning, all these things, where do we think stakeholder engagement sits in terms of time allocation? And this is really what this survey was around, to really start to quantify what that might look like. Now, in your team, this might look completely different in terms of priority. This is a general example, but that stakeholder engagement piece, I believe, is the most critical to get buy-in from internal stakeholders, but external stakeholders as well. So let's dive into some of the insights that we got here. What we did is ask a simple question, and that was, how much time does your team spend managing third-party requests for this data, this documentation, and various different metrics? And we have to take the perspective of both internal requests for information and external requests for information. And I'd like to focus on the external side, the public side, because I think it's a bit easier to manage. But if you look at this here, we go under 3 hours a week, 28% or so responded that under 3 hours per week is the time they spend. Now, that's not a huge amount, but that also includes those that don't have this requirement at all, or they have larger teams, so there's minimal effort. On the other side of the spectrum, we have 10 plus hours per week. And that's 23% of respondents said that 10 hours a week is spent on this. If you work that out, that's about 30% of someone's time going to manually sharing information. And in the middle, we have the average between 3 to 10 hours per week, 48.2%. The actual average overall was 7 hours. And we've done a bit of modeling on what that looks like if you took it from the context of a full 12 months. So how does this impact productivity? Well, it's not good. 2 hours a year potentially is lost to this manual process. And because there are so many different stakeholders within a value chain, and every one of those stakeholders needs different information contextual to their requirements, it is a challenging thing to consider. But if you look at it purely from a business case, if we can improve our productivity by saving time on manual processes, that means that's more time that we can invest into sustainability initiatives and other priorities in the organization. So how do we tackle this challenge, given that we have lots of fragmented data, metrics, and information and different standards to consider? We know that we have got internal requirements, but we also have external requirements as well with lots of different stakeholders. And I mean, this is the standard is that we have limited resources, and that's only going to get worse. So our debrief on this and the perspective from Misio and my standpoint is, if we looked in the future and thought through in 5 years' time, what does this look like then? And then reverse engineer that outcome back to where we are today, I think there's some interesting things to do. Number one, I think it's really important that we need to consider how we aggregate this information. We have to centralize this into a single repository or a simple repository that can be used for both internal and external purposes. And if we do this really well, and we are more transparent, it's far more likely that through transparency, we build trust between these stakeholders, and we save time as well. And then well into the future, if we do that very well, we actually start to amplify this progress narrative as a very powerful way of sharing with the world the good work and the investments that we're making across the business. Every hour saved should be used to focus on impact initiatives. And if this is interesting to you and if there was something you could take away from this, is to think about maybe building a little mini business case for what you're doing. Do a time audit for you or your team if you're involved in the sustainability initiatives, and start to quantify how much time is currently used for manual sharing of information. That builds a really solid business case because you can quantify the actual cost of time back into wages and various other things. And then if you think about putting that forward to the business to go, well, if we could help to automate or streamline or invest into areas that are going to help us with this, we can put that time into other more impact initiatives. Now, I'm happy to field any questions. Please reach out to me. I'm happy to share some of the other business cases that we have, and let me know if you've got any questions. Thank you.